Hi, welcome to Curiosity. I'm Gary J, your host, and today I thought I'd ask the question, do Ouija boards really work?
The desire to know and learn something.
You're listening to Gary J's Curiosity.
This is one of those questions that I ask people which often ends up with the believers blocking my Twitter or YouTube account. Now, I have to say that I don't actually go out my way to offend people, but I've done a lot of research into the board and I've tried it in numerous locations, situations, and then recorded the evidence to prove the point. Which is a lot more than a lot of people that I encounter have done, despite their claims of being advanced users and professionals and even spiritually bonded to the board. Whatever the hell that means. Now, I've heard all the claims, everything from how the glass flew across the room and smashed, how the table levitated, how the board flipped over, how their granddad came through, to even how the person or the house was then possessed by Zozo after using the board. You see, I've even spoke to mediums, board users, and watched video after video of people claiming that the goddamn thing works, and there's nothing to prove that these boards actually do work. I mean, if you really look at those who are involved in using the board, they fall into a few categories. First, there's those who do it at parties for a laugh, and you can almost guarantee it's being pushed by someone. Second, there's those that like to claim that it works because they want to prove to their friends and everyone else that they're in tune with their spiritual side. Thirdly, there's those that do it professionally or semi-professionally, who have a vested interest in the board performing its magic, should we say. So, they may be a medium or have some sort of shop that sell all these types of things like boards, spiritual stones, etc. But a word of warning, these people really don't like you messing with anything that is affecting their business, who will do everything from simply blocking you, to booting you off their page, to answering you with loads of fake accounts, or even getting their believers to argue with you on their behalf. And then they'll even go as far as threatening you. That has happened to me numerous times. And then finally, there's those that have some sort of mental health issue who see and hear things that the rest of us don't.
You're listening to the Curiosity
podcast.
But one of the real reasons we don't know if any of the board's claims are true is because some people are better at hiding the fact that they're pushing the planchette than others. Now, every time you try and debate this with a so-called believer, they will try and blind you with science. That is a fact. That's what they try and do. But then when that fails, they'll come up with excuse after excuse why the board hasn't worked. Everything from it's the wrong type of ground, you need more people, you need less people, your board isn't the right one, the board is made out of the wrong type of wood, the candles are wrong, the lavender isn't the right smell, it's too light, it's too dark, the board doesn't work that way, to my old favourite, which is always brought out in the paranormal field, you have negative energy.
You're listening to Gary J's Curiosity.
The problem with the claims is that the fact that there are too many theories and how it actually does work. You see, by this, what I actually mean is that if you go into forums or Facebook pages, you'll see new people asking for advice on how to use it. And one of those questions that is always asked is, can you use it alone? Now, you would think that it would be a straightforward yes or no answer. But no, some say yes and some say no. But the problem with that is that they both can't be right, surely. It's either one or the other. But again, when I question this, all I get is, it actually depends on the person. What the fuck are you talking about? It's either one or the other. It's just excuse after excuse.
Curiosity.
Do something that scares you.
You see, there's even a discrepancy on whether you need to buy a board or whether you can just make one at home using paper letters on a table with a glass placed in the middle. In the Ouija board documentary I made a few years ago, I sat in what is claimed to be a haunted forest. I was totally alone in the dead of night, 5 cameras surrounded me, and nothing happened. Well, apart from a leaf that fell out of a tree, but you'll have to watch that to understand. But again, I get excuse after excuse to why it didn't work. And the main one being, you can't do it on your own. There's not enough energy, apparently. So, when I heard that, undeterred, I travelled to the ancient Ram Inn with Justin and Dale from Paranormal Truth to take part in their documentary called
Ouija Dicing with Death.
I love that name. And despite sitting in what is claimed to be the UK's most haunted building with 2 other people performing a Ouija board, guess what? Nothing happened again. But the excuses still came. Those being, it's because you had an odd number of people. To that old doozer, you've all got negative energy.
You're listening to Gary J's Curiosity.
So here I am. I've sat in 2 different haunted places, once on my own and once with others, and nothing. But not to give up, my search continued, and then I heard that it was possible that if you got enough people and stared or even thought of a certain board, the power could move it collectively using their minds. So I set up my laptop with a Ouija board and streamed live over a 15-hour period. But what I witnessed were people saying, "I'm sure I can see it moving a bit," when it really wasn't. And then the excuses started, and one being, the camera was crap, you couldn't tell, it was too grainy, and the other was, it wasn't long enough. It was 15 fucking hours, love. Now, I took all that on board, and to be fair, my laptop camera was rubbish, but undeterred, I went out and bought a full HD Logitech webcam that cost me about 60 quid.
You're listening to the Curiosity podcast.
So, I set up the experiment again using better lighting and a better webcam and left it filming for around about 36 hours. And again, there was nothing. And again, the excuses came. And the main one being, you've guessed it, you've got negative energy. Now, I wouldn't have minded so much if these messages were from the same person. But these were different people, and I mean a lot of different people. But despite all this, they still seem to dispute any evidence that I've produced and still stick with their stories of how the board did this and did that.
Curiosity.
The desire to know and learn something.
Now, like I said, I don't actually go out my way to offend people, but unfortunately, there's no real evidence that these boards work. I would love nothing more for them to work. But saying that, I suppose on the other hand, that there's no real evidence that they don't work either, apart from my own personal experience. But if these boards do work, as some claim, why is it that everything is so varied? And how can a board that is mass-produced in a factory have the power to contact the dead? And why do we even need a board at all, especially when it was originally nothing more than a parlour game? Now, if people like mediums can speak to the dead, then why do they actually use a Ouija board as well? To be honest, there are so many flaws in the whole Ouija board concept that it's hard to believe that such an instrument could actually work. Anyway, that's it for today's podcast, and I hope you've enjoyed what you've heard. So thanks for listening. I'm Gary J, and remember that there's a new podcast every Thursday. Plus, if you like what you've heard, then give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Plus, don't forget, you can visit my website at curiosityuk.net, listen on SoundCloud and iTunes. Plus, remember, you can now watch my series Curiosity on Amazon Prime. So, chat soon, and remember, do something that scares you.
The desire to know and learn something.
You're listening to Gary J's Curiosity.